What's up, Titans fans? And welcome to another episode of Titans Global Podcast. I'm your host, Maximus Titan Fan. And with me, as always, is my good buddy Link. What's up, bro?
What's going on, guys? Good to be here. If you've been with us this long, we finally made it. First things first, into the season. This one was a tough one, but it's over. We have stuff to look forward to moving into this off season. Before we get into all that, make sure to give us a like, subscribe, comment, whatever you can do. Really helps the channel out. Get in the comment section. Let us know what you think. Already a lot of people in there, so join the party in that aspect. And with that, I guess we get right into it. It's finally mock draft Monday without feeling bad.
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't do any of that, obviously. I don't, I do online, but we don't, this is our last Monday show. These are our post game shows. We talk about the games, but obviously we'll talk a little bit about the off season too, because we can't help ourselves. But I went to the game Sunday, and it was absolutely miserable. The entire game was miserable. There wasn't very many highlight plays. There wasn't many cheerful moments other than the one bomb pass that was mistakenly taken. Um, but and Bryce Oliver's 55-yard return that ended up in a 3-and-out and a punt. But anyway, my
Bryce
point.
Oliver, just on the subject.
Yeah, go for it.
No, just that was it. Bryce Oliver, one of those younger guys that got an opportunity, showed up, kind of impressed. So, yeah, no, that's all I had on that. Just kind of interesting, a guy that had that connection with Malik Willis comes in the last game of the season. I don't know. Obviously, they were playing pretty soft coverages, but yeah, he had a heck of a day. So good for him.
Yeah, but my point is there was many different times of cheers, boos. There was a mixture of stuff. It was hilarious when Levis came out with the offense. There was almost an equal amount of cheers and boos, which was very funny for me, because how do you have such a mixed reaction? But especially this late in the season, how do you have such a mixed reaction? Uh, but the greatest point was as we're leaving, right? We're shuffling out. Game's over. Players are off the field. Time to go home. Only the real hardcore people had stayed this long, soaked at this point. And they announce over the entire stadium that the Patriots have just won their game. They were taking a knee, as a matter of fact, is the way they said it. Milroe is taking a knee. So the Patriots have won, and the Tennessee Titans are going to be the number 1 overall draft pick in the NFL. So we did it. We made it through this entire horrible season, and we were rewarded at the end with a first-round draft pick. Hallelujah.
Yeah, it's something, and like you said, needed a little help from some former VFLs in in Milton and Mayo, who, by
Yeah.
the way, got fired before fans could get home after losing that number 1 pick. So, that is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's a crappy prize to have at the end of a 3-win season, but it's a prize nonetheless. Now the key is going to be either getting the right people or making sure you have the right people in place to do what's going to set this team up for success with that number 1 pick, whether it be trading back, whether it be taking a quarterback, whether it be anything. Callahan said tonight on the coaches show that in his mind, anything's on the table if he's here and he's helping make those decisions. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting offseason. But like you said, there is a little bit more of a glimmer of hope just because you have that number 1 pick. It's at least something that's gonna be an exciting finish to a pretty uneventful, letdown, disappointing year.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many trials and tribulations through this season. And yeah, like Brandon points out, Jeff Simmons wasn't very happy. Um, yeah, obviously. I don't know any all pro that wants to go, a 3-win team. But Yeah, I mean, it's just the way it is, and like he said here, Aaron, if you'd have told me at the beginning of this season, before we played any football, that we were going to be the number one draft pick, I would have laughed at you. I was laughing at the people that said we were going to pick in the top 5 or top 10 even. I was like, no way, man. We're at least going to be, average, but
Mhm.
we weren't. And, we're a little bit deeper than we thought. We gotta try to dig ourselves out of it. And honestly, we need all the draft capital we can get. So I expect this to be a highly eventful offseason. I think there's going to be a lot of moves, restructuring of contract, all kinds of things to make this team better overall. Uh, so
Yeah, I agree, and it's not all done in the draft. I mean, you're going to have to make some splashes in free agency. Obviously, your free agency period starts before the draft, so hopefully they can kind of fill a lot of those holes before they even have to make that first pick to kind of see where the biggest problems lie. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of deficiencies on this roster at multiple positions on both sides of the ball. So yeah, I mean, just like you said, a lot of things to figure out. Curious to see how much ownership is involved this offseason. Curious to see if the same people that are in place are still in place when the draft rolls around. Um, I think I think there's still a level of uncomfortable ability, if I said that right, with some of the people on this staff, with some of the people in the front office. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. But from an organizational standpoint, I talk about it every week. Going into this new stadium in 2027, and kind of pouring all of this money and having a destination city for tourism and for eventually wanting to host a Super Bowl and the March Madness and things like that. Like you have to have a relevant football team to put in that stadium. You have to put butts in seats. So it's something that they're going to have to figure out pretty quick. And this is the first step in that. And I'm hoping when we're sitting there in 2027, looking back at this number one pick, that we can say that's when it really turned around. Whoever is the person that makes that pick, I hope we can sit back and say this was the turning point. This was when the Titans got back on top, and this is what took them to the next level. So hopefully, again, we can see that happen.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about some of the more interesting aspects of this end game. The rotating quarterback. That was interesting. I mean, Rudolph. If you look at what he did in the game, it was really indicative of what he's done all season. It wasn't bad. I mean, Rudolph didn't come in and throw an interception on his third pass, but it wasn't good either. I mean, and that's the way he's been all season. I mean, 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I think he had somewhere around a 60% completion percentage. The only thing he does really a lot better than Will Levis is not take sacks. And Levis really could learn from there. And that was one of the really big knocks on his game coming out of college was his footwork. It absolutely sucks. His lower body movement, he relies on that giant strong arm he has, and that won't be there forever. So he needs to figure out his mechanics, or he's never going to be able to succeed at this level, which he might not be able to anyway. But the point is, Rudolph is done in Tennessee, in my opinion. I don't think they re-sign him. I don't think there's any reason to. He was on a 1-year contract, and he'll be gone, and we'll have somebody else in the backfield. I honestly feel like we're at least going to pick up a vet, whether we draft one or not, whether we draft a quarterback or not. I think we pick up a vet. I think the most sense between those vets probably is Derek Carr and Trey Lance. But I'm getting way off track and on a tangent that I shouldn't be, because that's weeks from now, man. We don't need to be talking about that crap right now.
Yeah,
All
but I
we
mean,
need to know is Rudolph is done.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's where we're at because, like you said, you've got two quarterbacks in this one. Obviously, neither one of them were good enough to win the game. With Levis, I think he posted a 1.2 QBR, which is the second lowest in the league this year. Had the one
next to his other one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's two of his and Aaron Rodgers are the bottom
Yeah.
two. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's a rough year for quarterback play. So that's kind of where we're at. Like it's hard to even talk about this game without looking forward because there is a that's probably the biggest hole when it comes to this team. And then like you said, Rudolph, I think it's very doubtful that he's back unless he's brought in as a depth piece or competition. But again, just not good enough. I mean, 7 to 70 yards. Like the stat sheets for Rudolph always look somewhat decent, but when you watch him play, you can see that he is primarily backup talent in this league. And then Levis, it's interesting what you even do with him this offseason because he's still on a rookie deal. I think it's pretty obvious that he's not the guy at this point. I don't even know that he's good enough to be a backup. I mean, if you draft a young guy and bring in a veteran, which I think is the best course of action, I mean, where does that even leave Levis? I mean, on the practice squad. So I don't know. Like it's going to be weird. It's going to be a weird one. But I would pretty much agree. I do think Rudolph is done. Um, I think his time's more than likely up, but I'm not. I'm kind of with what Callahan said in the way that like I think anything's on the table. Like there's
Yep.
just so much that has to be fixed this year, this off season that I think absolutely anything is on the table.
Yeah, honestly, I think unless they absolutely fall in love with a quarterback that's in this draft, and even if they do, I still feel like they pick up a veteran just for competitiveness in camp. But unless they absolutely fall in love with a quarterback in this draft, I feel like they pick up a veteran who is at least starter quality in the league already established. And then, you bring Levis back, I guess, if you don't like any of the quarterbacks in this draft to continue to try to get some competition or whatever. I mean, look, I'm still not saying that Levis is completely out of it. I don't think personally, unless he makes major strides and changes a lot of the way that his brain works, which is really hard to do, especially as an athlete. Um, but unless that happens, I don't see him succeeding. But I'm not saying that he can't, and he's still got a really high ceiling. So yeah, some of these guys figure it out third, fourth year, and if that's what it takes for Levis, that's fine. He can sit behind a vet for a couple years if they still think he's the dude. But I don't think that's the way it's going to work out. They might think that next year, but again, I don't think that's the way it works out.
Well, I mean, I think the fear with Levis, like what really sucks is that he's not a young quarterback. Like when you look at quarterbacks, he's 26, 27 years old. He played pretty much all of his eligibility in college.
Yeah.
At least with the Colts with Anthony Richardson, it's like okay, he's a 22-year-old kid. He still has a long way to grow and a lot of experience to kind of put under his belt. But with Levis, like I don't know that he has that many more opportunities because again, you are an older quarterback. You're not an experienced quarterback, especially not in the NFL, but you're an older quarterback, and it's I do think that makes it a little more difficult to appeal to teams because if you're 27, 28 years old with a stat sheet that looks like Levis, like it's going to be tough to take another chance on that. So I do wish him the best. I mean, he signed a lifetime deal with
Mayo.
a mayonnaise company. So, I hope for their sake and for his sake, he can find his way back on top. But I just
Hey
don't.
man.
I
Hey
just
man.
don't think
Look,
it's for this organization.
as much as I don't like the whole Levis and Mayo thing, Hellman's was extremely nice to me, and they didn't even have to respond to me. They're a huge company, and I'm sure it's some stupid ass rep or whatever. I don't, whatever. It doesn't matter. But the point is that they actually responded to me and were really nice and accommodating. I thought it was really badass, if I'm being honest, by a company. So I don't really like mayonnaise in life, but if I did, I would definitely be eating Hellman's for the rest of my life. but that's just because they were really cool to me. But whatever, I don't really care. But anyway.
Fair enough. I love mayonnaise, and that's what makes this so much worse because that's what I think about every time I use it.
So, what is your brand of mayonnaise? Is it Hellmann's?
Honestly, no. I'm kind of a Kraft guy. I like the Kraft, and I like some of the Chipotle mayos. So, I'll get the different brands. So I'm a connoisseur of the mayos in a little bit of way.
Okay, look, we're in our off-season show, so y'all be ready for this normal stuff, okay? But a lot of people don't know that mayonnaise is the base sauce for a lot of different things, like honey mustard and other sauces like that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you start adding stuff to mayonnaise, it can get amazing. Like the Chipotle, there's one that they make that's a sriracha mayonnaise.
So good. Yep.
Oh my God, dude. I love eating that hot dog, just right on top of it, slam it. That is awesome, dude.
Yep.
But yeah. Sorry, got off topic there.
No, you're good. But yeah, so I do hope that Levis finds his way back into a role on an NFL team. I wish him nothing but the best. I honestly think he's got a pretty good character. I think he's a good dude, when it comes to helping out in the community and kind of his attitude outside of football. He's just not a good football player. I mean, if I'm being honest. Now, that being said, that's when comparing him to other NFL caliber quarterbacks. He's just not at that level yet. I don't know that he can get there. This is it's going to be interesting to see, especially if a young guy is brought in, how well this coaching staff, if it is the same coaching staff, how well they're able to develop him. Because if you look at Callahan, coming into this year, we looked back at all the quarterbacks he had worked with, the Derek Carrs, the Peyton Mannings, the Drew Brees. I mean, he's been with some pretty high name guys. And the question was, did a lot of those guys fall into his lap? I mean, was the talent already there, or did he help in the progression of these guys? But with Levis, we saw the opposite. We saw him regress as a player from last year to this year. We saw him make dumb mistakes time after time. So I think it's a fair question to ask if you do bring in a young guy, can they develop him? Can they turn him into the best version of themselves? And I think that's a question that's left to be answered. So if Levis does have another opportunity with the different coaching staff, whether that be here or elsewhere, going to be really interesting to see if it's the same type of thing, and if it really falls more on him, or if it falls on what the coaching staff tried to teach him and instill in him.
That's a good point. And Aaron, I'll be honest with you, dude. Me and a buddy were getting into this conversation after a few drinks. And what we surmised at the end of the conversation was he wouldn't stay uninjured long enough. His body just can't. I mean, let's be honest. That's one of the biggest problems. I was talking about, Mason. I think he had 11 sacks on the season, if I'm not mistaken. And Will Levis had 41. There you go. 11 and 41. Yeah. So, and that's the thing, man. I would love to do this because he's a really tough dude. And I think he would actually get into this kind of role of even just being the guy that comes in and, is the short yardage guy that might do a trick play every now and then or something. I think he'd be down for that. But I just don't think his body would hold up for it. I'm interested. And like I said, to be honest, most of the time when people ask me to, what do I think about a draft pick, or was this guy a bust, or was that guy a bust? I say you have to wait at least 3 years after a draft to know how a draft really should have went. They redraft all the time. But really, if you look at it in the NFL, after 3 years, you know what you got. Is usually you either come in as a rookie and you either do really well or you don't. And then your sophomore season, you either do really well again or you have a sophomore slump. But the third year is really that's the telling year. It's when you get your grit about you. You know what the game is. There's no more surprises. It's just go out there and perform. And can you? And that's really what it's about. So I'm not going to give up on Levis at least for one more year. I'm not saying that I want him to be our quarterback. I'm just saying I'm not throwing him in the gutter just yet. If they want to trade him, fine. Cool with that. Not upset at all. Just saying I don't want to completely trash him just because my own rule is 3 years. And my God, I need to at least give the kid my own rule. If I can give most other players, I should at least give my quarterback the same.
Yeah, I won't trash him, but I'm done. I don't
Yeah,
really
no,
care.
I get it.
I don't want to see. I don't want to see him in a Taysom Hill position because I don't trust his decision making. Like if you look at Taysom Hill and what he's asked to do in that system, it's option stuff. It's him making the right read. It's him doing the right things when the ball's in his hands, and that's actively been a detriment to this team this season with Will Levis and his decisions that he's made. So for me, I'm out completely. Like I don't need to see him in a uniform. I don't need to see him active. Like I wish him the best. I hope that through practices and off season and training camps that he can show some improvement and get another opportunity. But I don't need it. That's I'm fine. I'm good on that front.
I get it, man. I totally get it. Let's talk about something other than Will Levis, for God's sake. Calvin Ridley got his 1,000 yards, which they did. I not say that Callie would be trying to force that, and he sure did. He made sure that Calvin got his 1,000 yards. Obviously Tony Pollard didn't get the opportunity around the red zone to get that those 2 touchdowns, but whatever.
Yeah, and he really
Point
fought
is,
injury in this one too. That was
yeah,
kind of tough to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was already kind of banged up, and I think honestly they were just like, "Look, man, it's the end of the season. You got 1,000 yards. Let's just pack it in for this year." I think a lot of players were like that because I'll be honest with you, I was there, and after Calvin Ridley got that 1,000 yards, I did not see him on the field. Maybe one time after that I can think of. There might have been 2 plays, but I think it was just one play after that. My point is once he got his 1,000 yards, he wasn't on the field hardly at all for the rest of the game. And that was right before half, or was that right after half? I don't know.
That was just after. I believe you put me on the spot, but I think so. But
yeah, no, I think it was just after halftime.
But I'm with you because even on the defensive side, like if you look at the 82-yard run, 92-yard run, I don't know the big run, 93. So I'm not, again, I don't like to question effort, but this didn't look like a team that was which, I mean, look, it's early vacation. You're not going to the playoffs. Obviously you're playing this game for personal reasons, either to earn a spot on this team or another team, or if you're Calvin Ridley, like hit your incentives, but the effort just wasn't there. And look, I'm glad it wasn't because they needed that number 1 pick. So it all works out in the end. But yeah, I mean, just all around this week, it's hard to get a lot of analysis from a game like this just because of the attitudes going in it from both sides. Because if you're Houston, you're not playing for anything. You're in the playoffs. Your spot's pretty much locked up. If you're the Titans, you're not going to the playoffs. Like, if anything, it benefits you to lose. So getting any type of analysis and on play in this one is going to be kind of difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron brought it up perfectly there. This is just some backyard ball, dude. Mm-hmm. Literally, after they scored, I feel like they scored on the first drive. Anyway, after they scored the first time, Davis Mills came in. You never saw C.J. Stroud again. Yep. He sat on the sideline the entire time. Halftime, he came out. I don't even think he was in pads. I mean, he was in, his gear, but he wasn't. I don't think he was padded up. He might have been. I don't know, but I wasn't paying that much attention to their sideline, if I'm being honest. I was close enough to see the Titans' faces when they were coming off the field. And by the way, Callie was looking up at one point like that up into the stands, and I yelled at him, "What are you looking at?" And I swear to God he heard me, which was funny And one of the highlights of the game was getting to yell at Callie. But anyway, Calvin Ridley. Third time, three different teams wanted to bring that up. Third time, three different teams, 1,000 yards. That's impressive. Three different offensive systems. I mean, and that's what we paid him to do, was come in, get the problem is it's the four touchdowns. The four touchdowns is what we're, you know what I mean? He had 19 big time plays. I don't know what the hell big time plays are, but that was in the stats. But he had 19. That's nice. I mean, you look at the rest of the receivers and it's like 2, 5. You know, it's ridiculous as much as he has. But the four touchdowns is just, and the yards after catch. His yak is ridiculously small. It should be a lot bigger, especially for somebody of his agility and stuff. I just don't think he wants to take that big hit.
Well, I mean, it's partly that, but I think it's also part of the fact that you're asking him to play a number one position, and he's not necessarily a number one wide receiver. Like,
That's
if
a good point.
I mean, he's the one having to run the vertical routes, to run the deep stuff, because he's basically the only one they've got who can do it. Minus NWI, I guess you could throw him in that conversation, but it's tough when you've got all the attention on you, because teams know that you're the guy they're going to go to. I think that's why, tight ends have been able to help out so much this year. I hate that we didn't get to see Chig in this last one. Looked like an abdominal injury. But I think that's why they've had some success, because, the wide receivers, they take that pressure away from them. They're able to get into the open spaces and make those catches. And with Calvin Ridley, when you talk about yards after catch, when you talk about, what we expected him to be, he was kind of supposed to be the sidekick to Hopkins. Hopkins was supposed to be what Calvin Ridley had to become towards the end of the season. And Calvin Ridley was supposed to be that guy who gave you some of the quick stuff, who gave you the out routes, who gave you the run after catch. So I think all in all, I would call Calvin Ridley a success. But I say that with a grain of salt, because you can't go into next season with him still as your number one, or he will not be successful,
that is correct.
and the team will not be successful. You have to get someone else on the outside who can take the bulk of those. You're our guy. We're going to throw it up, and we know you're going to be there. You need that type of person in this offensive scheme for it to work correctly.
Agreed. Yeah, Ridley definitely needs that possession receiver. Really is what D-Hop was for us. He was a great possession receiver. Ridley was that number 2 guy, like you said, that did the quick stuff, the over the across the middle stuff. But Chig got hurt. I think it was the very first punt for the Titans came off. Like you said, it looked like he was grabbing his stomach. Again, it's cool enough that I was actually close enough to see that you could tell he was visibly in pain and upset, which, again, cool enough to be that close to see that he was visibly upset. I don't know if you could see that from the TV. I haven't watched it, which is another weird thing. There are very few games that I've watched a bunch of replays of like I normally do. I'd normally watch a game at least 3 times before I talk about it, but whatever. This season's been weird. NWI, though, talking about him, touchdown machine, dude. 9 touchdowns. But I will say this. It was clear, or it's clear to me now at least, that he was just getting lost in coverage.
Absolutely.
And he was taking advantage of that. Yep. Once teams started keying in on the fact that he was the target in the red zone area, he didn't do much. And that's because, I'm glad to be brought back down to earth before the end of the season, because I would hate to hand this dude a huge contract and feel like a freaking idiot.
Again, it's the same thing as I said with Ridley. I think as a whole, he had a successful season when you asked him to do what he had to do, but he's not a number 2 receiver. I would dare to say he's a good number 3 receiver. I think NWI is exactly what we came into this season expecting, which is a guy who's going to be available, a guy who can make the catches if you absolutely need him to. He's a good rotational depth piece. As we saw this year, he can be the guy get lost in those coverage and be a touchdown machine. And I'm okay with keeping him here. I'm 100% okay with keeping him here. I'm just not okay with him being a number 2, which is what they asked him to do at the end of the season. So, all in all, again, I think it's a good success story. I think he did earn another year on this team. And if not on this team, I absolutely wish him the best wherever he goes. I really like the guy, but I do hope it's here. And he can kind of find ways to work into this rotation as the Titans start to fill some of these pieces. But yeah, it's just from a raw talent perspective, he's not what you wanted a number 2 position.
Yeah, you know who he reminds me of? I don't know if you're old school enough to remember, but you remember Justin Gage?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we got him from the Bears. When he came in, he was like a 400-yard receiver. I mean, he basically almost had NWI stats almost perfectly. And he never really, made it huge, but he did succeed. I think one of his biggest seasons was like the 800 or 900-yard season, but still, it wasn't about that. It was the effort that you saw from him every week, and that's kind of what NWI reminds me of.
Well, and you need guys like that. Like you need every team needs an NWI, a guy who's he's going to be available every week. If you need to call him up, he's going to be there. He knows how to take care of his body, he knows how to stay healthy, and he can make those plays. He just can't make them every single down. So everybody needs an NWI, and the Titans need him.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it, Link. I couldn't have said it better myself. Stick around about 40 seconds. Got to give the sponsors, their time. What's up? What's up, Titans fans? Maximus Titan fan here. Are you in need of professional excavation services? Look no further. Red Zone Builders has the expertise, experience, and equipment to handle all or any excavation project, big or small. Whether you need land clearing, site preparation, trenching, foundation excavation, or any other excavation services, they have you covered. Their team of skilled professionals will work diligently to ensure your project is completed safely, efficiently, and to your satisfaction. Trust the experts at Red Zone Builders to get the job done right. Aaron got me smiling with this. I ain't heard that since back in the day. 12 games. Sorry. Pollard. Quick statement. Worth the money. Worth every penny.
Yep.
Dude has been solid all season. Over 1,000 yards. What was five touchdowns? Not great, but not bad. But the big thing was, I'm gonna have to look this stat up because I wanted to try to look it up before I got on here, and it was just last time I had to actually figure it up game by game, and it looks like that's how I'm gonna have to do it this time too. But 10-yard runs, as far as Pollard goes, I am interested to see how many 10-yard runs he had, or runs over 10 yards, 10 plus yards. I feel like it's a lot. I know there was a lot of times, even if it was second down, he would get 10 plus yards on the regular. At least a couple times during the game, it seemed like he would break almost loose. You know what I mean? He just doesn't have that breakaway speed. He has the talent to get away from the tackler. He just doesn't have that breakaway speed. But
so he had 18 explosive runs, which are 10 plus yards. That's the 7th best amongst running backs. So, yeah, pretty spot on. I think some of the touchdown woes that he experienced were just the inability for this team to convert in the red zone. That was a huge problem all year for the offense as a whole. But when you look at what he was able to come in and do and the value they got him for, he was one of the best offensive pieces on this team. Next season, I'm hoping Tyjae Spears can stay healthy and come in and have the season that we expected him to. But with that being said, I don't take anything away from Pollard. I think going into next year, he has earned himself a running back one kind of tag. And even if Spears is back and they do turn it into a rotation, if you call it 1A, 1B, Pollard is clearly your 1A right now. just with the versatility that he was able to show.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, man. In the preseason and early in the season, I kept with the thought that Tajay Spears was going to come out of this season as a clear number one, and I had it completely backwards. It was Tony Pollard that was going to come out as the clear number one. I don't know if I want it to stay that way or not. I don't care. I just want good production, and that's what Tony Pollard gave us. And it looked like he was giving 100% effort on every play, and that's really all I need. Yeah, look at that, Michael Newsom. 53 first downs. That's what I'm talking about, man.
Well, and in a year where none of these players made a Pro Bowl, you look at the alternates, and he earned one of those alternate spots along with, I think, Jeffrey Simmons, Amani Hooker. So, you look at those guys, even though they didn't make the Pro Bowl, like it still says something to be an alternate. So, you never know what happens. One of these teams might make a Super Bowl or an injury. So, it'd be really cool to see him actually get in the Pro Bowl. I'm all in for Pollard at this point. I'm excited about what he's going to be able to do next season.
Yeah, and let's see. I was actually trying to look up his contract real quick, but it looks like 3 years, $21 million, average salary $7.2 million. That is like I said, that is worth every penny. I feel like they did a really good job. Yeah, I do too. I think Spears is a great third down back, combo back, change of pace, whatever you want to call it. He's a scat back, and he catches the ball really smoothly and does well in open space. So, yeah, like you said, I really hope that he can stay healthy this year and really perform like he wants to. So, other than that, and the fact that Tay Martin completely stole a touchdown pass from Bryce Oliver, or it might have been an interception. I don't know. It looked like
that was an interception.
I was gonna say,
yep.
It looked like it could have gone either way, and then all of a sudden, here come Tay Martin out of nowhere and just snatches the ball and runs off, and everybody's like, "What the hell?" It was pretty funny to see in real time, if I'm being honest.
So according to Coach Mack on the radio call, apparently that has been worked in practice to have a quote unquote overthrown ball and then have a receiver kind of undercut that and go over top of the what the defense would think is the intended receiver. I don't know if there's any truth to that. If there is, it's absolutely genius, and I want to see more of it. Kind of looked like a fluke play to me, but good on Martin either way, whether it's designed or whether it was kind of off the cuff on his part. Way to just stay with the ball, be in a good position, make the play. That's what we were looking for in this last game is, what guys can make those plays, what can we find to get some excitement about. So yeah, good for him. I think that was his only catch of the season. Am I right in saying that? Yeah. So
that was his first career reception.
Yeah, so one catch, one touchdown. That's a pretty good way to go out. So, yeah, good for him.
Yeah, good for Tay Martin, man. Whoever Tay Martin is. No offense to you, bro. I'm just saying. Let's talk about something that I've been waiting to talk about until the end of the year because I wanted to see final numbers. Harold Landry got a sack in the last game, which allowed him to get to 50 career sacks, which means there's only two people that have more sacks than him, and that's Jamon Curse and Jarrell Casey as far as the Titans era goes. However, he only got 9 sacks on the season. Mm-hmm. That's just not enough. I think he counted for $17.5 million for 9 sacks. I don't care how many runs he stuffed, which he didn't, or passes he knocked down, which he didn't. I don't really care, to be honest. With 9 sacks, you're a edge defender. You are paid good money to create sacks, not playing coverage or tackle running backs. I mean, yes, that's part of your job is to tackle the running back, but the main thing you're supposed to do, sack the quarterback. That's sad, man. I mean, there are some outside linebackers or defensive whatever you want to call them, edge rushers that had his career or his season total in the first quarter of the season. I mean, this is just it's ridiculous. And I say this now because I want to move to a further point that is if Harold Landry doesn't take some kind of pay cut, then I don't see him with the Titans. And that's a lot of money. I know it's a lot of money, and it might be an overreaction by me right now. I'm just saying that in my eyes, Harold Landry is the single most disappointing player on our squad this year for me.
Yeah, I don't totally disagree with that. I think that's going to be, you know, you look at the needs obviously with quarterback and stuff, but I think edge rusher is going to be where it gets really interesting this offseason. I've seen some stuff thrown out there about kind of packaging that number one pick with maybe a first this year, a first next year, and a guy like Max Crosby. I think if that's on the table, that's absolutely something that should be looked at for this team. But with Landry, it's just difficult because if you don't get a guy like Max Crosby, who is elite at his position, can you get someone else that you feel comfortable replacing him with right now with what's going to be available? And obviously we don't know all the names that are going to be out there at this point. But it's tough for me because I do agree it was a huge letdown when you talk about expectations versus what we got. I think it was one of the worst players this year. It's just I don't know if they can move on that quick without having someone else to take that position right over. Like if you get an edge rusher in the draft, unless they just come out in the offseason and completely show out, I think I would rather them kind of alternate time with Landry. And I know that's a very expensive thing to do, but it's going to be just as expensive to move on from him. And the fact that he wasn't traded at the deadline tells me that not so much that the Titans weren't trying to move him, but that there just wasn't a lot of interest. So I don't know that he really, between the trade deadline and now, I don't think he's really upped his value any. So, I mean, I'm sure they might try to shop him around. I just don't think there's a lot there. Sell. So yeah, I mean, so if you're able to get a guy who's elite at the position, I totally agree. I think you can move on. But if you have to get a younger guy, I think you bring a young guy in and kind of alternate snaps with him and just try to get through next season in hopes that the young guy you bring in can take that position over within the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. A lot of people have talked about Abdul Carter from Penn State, and I've been watching a little bit of tape on him, and he does appear to be an all-around good edge defender. However, I feel like he's just another version of Harold Landry, and it really bothers me because I can understand making this mistake once and it's not even, I mean, it kind of is Rand's mistake, but not really. But I can understand making the mistake once, but you do it again. Oh my God. You cannot waste that pick on, I don't know. I'm tore up. I don't want to talk about the draft.
The upward trajectory of what you had in Landry was really good initially. Like it wasn't until the injury that we really saw a significant drop off. And then everybody just expected that when he healed from the injury and came back, he was just all of a sudden going to be what he was and better. And that just didn't happen. So, I mean, that's tough for me to say because initially you got your value out of Landry. That's how we earned this big contract in the first place because all signs pointed to this guy was going to be elite. And I'm not saying he can't still be that. And I'm not saying Abdul Carter is going to be or isn't going to be that. But look, Abdul Carter is probably a top 10 pick. Do you really want to spend your number one overall, or even if you trade back, do you want to spend a top 10 on Abdul Carter on that, Landry replacement? I don't know. I don't know that to me, Abdul Carter is one of those guys who gets picked up by a team who just feels like they're maybe one piece away.
Yeah.
With the Titans having so many holes, I don't know that that's where I would go with my first round. So, again, the draft's a long way away, and heck, Abdul Carter might still have 2 games left to play before he's ready to start even thinking about the draft. So, I mean, it's, I think you've got to see who's out there, who's available, who's getting shopped around. But I guess my final word on that is I think that you can't just move away from Landry until you have a guy who's just as good enough. And I don't know, I definitely don't think the person's on the roster right now, and I don't know if you get a guy in the second or third round if they're going to be ready to take that spot over. So we'll see what happens. But I do see your point. When it comes to disappointments and expectations, Landry's right at the top of that list.
Yeah, but I also see your point, man. We can't. I mean, Key is pretty much all but gone. There's,
Yeah.
I don't see any logical reason in keeping him at $7.5 million. At $1.5 million, he was a steal this year, but at $7.5 million next year, if he has the same production, no, I'm good. So I don't see how we can move on from both of those guys without having the talent there to replace him. So
and you've got Landry on contract. I mean, the devil you know is better than the one you don't at this point.
Well, that's a good point, too. Titans haven't done really well with the unknown. Last thing I'll talk about in the game, we talked about it pregame. One of the major what's up, dude? One of the major keys we talked about winning the game was run defense. Damn. Not only did they just run at will like all day long, but that 93-yard, man, by some backup, dude. Oh, man. That was a little hurtful to me, Titans. And it's just because we've been so good at the run. I think we gave up 200. Is it 200? I think it was 200 and something yards, 206 or something like that. It was stupid. It was a stupid number. It was way too many. I know that. Gave up way too many yards. But, yeah, that's really all that I have left to talk about the Texans game. Thank you, By the way, I love that. Last year we end the season, not really anything for us, but we screw over the Jags. And this year, the Texans basically assisted us to a first round draft pick, and we appreciate that, Houston. We appreciate your uniforms and your help to get us to the number one.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they make him pay for it next year. Is all I gotta say. I mean, it's
got to be number one in something.
If I were gonna split games with a divisional opponent, I guess I would want that team to be Houston. So you still got them in their house, so that says something. But yeah, at this point, it's kind of like at the end of it, it's kind of like just a weight was lifted off. Like it's finally over. One of the worst seasons in Titans history, probably, if we're being completely honest. And there is stuff to look forward to. I mean, there's going to be an off season, which I feel like is probably going to be full of surprises, stuff that we haven't expected. And look, all the people who complain about not being nationally relevant, like, here you go. Here's your opportunity. They have to talk about them now, I guess you could say. You can't go to commercial break during the Titans' first round pick this year. So that's a plus. That's a positive. So yeah, just go do it. Just make the right choices, make the right picks. This right here makes or breaks franchises for years to come. When you have the number one overall, you can end up like the Chiefs, or you can end up like the Browns. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So, in like I said, in 2027, when we're sitting here, I think we look back at this moment when they had this number one overall pick, and that's when you see where the trajectory of the team really went, what they were able to do with that, the decision they were able to make. So we'll see what happens. Stay tuned. It's going to be a wild one.
I was going to say, if nothing else, it's going to be a very exciting offseason. Like I said, I expect to see trades, cuts. I really feel like there's going to be a lot of surprises. You can damn sure bet there's going to be some big name free agents that we're going to target in the offseason, probably in a couple different positions. And I'm sure we're going to be shopping that number one pick around just to see what we can get for it. So, I mean, it's going to be fun. Like you said, stay tuned, buckle up, get ready. Titans are in everybody's face again. Even if they don't like it, doesn't matter. They have to deal with us because we're the number one pick. We might have lost the season, but we won the damn draft pick. And it's not a huge consolation prize because this is like the worst freaking draft in, I don't know, 3 years that I can think of. But still, it's something. It's something. For once, something worked out for the Titans. That's what I felt like. On my drive home from Nashville, I kept saying to myself, well, if nothing else, we at least got the best outcome that we could possibly hope for going into this game. For once this season, we got the absolute best outcome we could possibly get.
Good point.
Twice, I guess, because, beating Houston in Houston was nice. But at that point, the season was already pretty much over. We had to win out to even be in the conversation, and obviously that did not happen. So, but I think that about you. Got any final thoughts on this?
No, that's it. Like I said earlier, just stay tuned, stay with us. We're gonna keep y'all up to date as much as we can this off season on what's going on, what the moves are, what we think should happen, what we think will happen. So. Like I said in the beginning, if you're not subscribed, make sure to do that. But before you head out tonight, we thank you for watching, as always. And like Maximus said, just buckle up.
Absolutely. And this will conclude our dual show weeks. I apologize. Unless we have, a scheduling thing, then obviously, because this is our special guest type time of year. So there's a guest that says, hey, I can do Monday instead of Friday. Well, then obviously we're doing our show on Monday. But for the most part, for the regular, our show will be Friday nights, 9, 8 Central, whatever. I always say that wrong, but I think I actually said it right.
That was right. Yep.
Sweet. Thank you for sticking with us through another season, through another show. And we appreciate it. Like you said, if you're not subscribed to us yet, check us out on YouTube, man. You get a couple little tidbits of extras through YouTube that you don't anywhere else. But anyway, thank you again for a wonderful season with you guys. I'm always really appreciative of this show, if nothing else, to have an outlet to where I can complain or loathe in the revel in the win. So thank you for that. Tighten up.
Tighten up.
Peace out.